Are you ready? The Kornelia Stephanie Show. Wake up to love, your call to action. Join Kornelia as she empowers others to live heaven on earth. Kornelia teaches listeners how to be the authority over yourself, embracing your inner guru. Feel yourself uplifted into limitless expansion, integrating ease and grace in a changing world. This show will cover topics such as unconditional love, your physical body, how to be in extraordinary relationships, create financial and emotional wealth, embracing entrepreneurship in the new earth. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you this Friday, talking about stories of hope. My first guest today is Emily Cleghorn. She is a life reclamation coach, an Amazon best-selling author, speaker, and podcaster with a heart to help her clients to awaken and align with their authentic whole self. Welcome to the show today, Emily.
Thank you, Kornelia, for having me.
Wonderful to have you here. So in the green room, we were talking about what you do out there in the world and what you're working out there in the world. And so why don't we let our listeners know here today what your work is and why you got started in this work.
Fantastic. So I am a life reclamation coach that works with moms who are navigating motherhood while also simultaneously working on healing their inner child and discovering and realigning with who they were created to be versus who they were told to be in their trauma. So what started me on this path is my own story. I was unaware. I had a traumatic childhood, and after years and years and years, I thought, okay, that's in the past. I'm good to go. And then in 2018, when I became a mom for the first time, I had kind of a rude awakening. It was like a freight train hit me, and all of the repressed trauma that I had stuffed down into the recesses of my soul came bubbling up, and I became terribly afraid that I was going to repeat the cycle. So it began me on this journey of finding healing in for my inner child so that I'm not repeating patterns for my kids. And when I was really, really deep in that fire, I knew that somehow, some way, I was going to make it out of it so that it wasn't as intense. And I decided in that moment that I was going to turn back and help other mamas, because I know that I'm not special enough to be the only mama going through this type of situation. So a fire was lit, and that's how it got started in a very brief story.
So you're a mom today. How old is did you have a daughter?
Yeah, so I had a daughter in 2018. So she just turned 4 in September. And then I had a son in 2020. So he's turning 3 in February.
Okay, so you were having your children while at the same time being presented this opportunity to heal your own inner child so that you don't repeat the patterns of the past, right?
Yeah.
So would you mind sharing what some of those reoccurring traumas would be, just so that people that are listening to it can actually identify? Because when we use words like emotions and trauma and all of that, it's not really identifiable. But when a person really says, I couldn't get out of bed, or I was, so what were some of when you talked about that fear
that you were feeling, that fear that
Yeah.
you were going to have, because what didn't you get?
Yeah. So initially, I was fearful that I was going to cause my daughter the same hurt and burden her with the same heartache that my mom so graciously gifted to me. Um, and when she was like first born, the first couple months of her life, my fight or flight response was on. And I had to make a conscious decision to stay instead of listening to every part of my body that was saying run. Um, and it took me a long time to open up to anybody about how I was feeling because of the shame and the guilt, the feelings that I was having. My judgment on those were that they made me a bad mom or a bad person. And if I told my husband or anybody else about it, they would label me a bad mom, a bad person, and they would leave. And so that fear.
So then you
kept
had
me-
the fear of abandonment.
Yeah, I did. Um, that fear kept me quiet. And I suffered in silence for a really long time before I opened up to my husband about anything. He knew something was wrong because of the way I was acting and how emotional I was, but he didn't know what because I wouldn't let him in. Um, so I've done a lot of work around realizing that I am a different person than my mother was.
Mm.
And times 2018 was a completely different time, different circumstances than 1989 or 1990 or, times have changed. I'm a different person. I'm not her. And so I have the power to make different choices.
So when you were, when all the feelings that came up before your husband found out, before you spoke out, did you feel the feelings of that you're not lovable, or that
Mhm.
you would fail at loving your daughter, that you would so did you feel that lack of self-love for yourself? uh because,
Yeah.
right, you felt that lack of self-love for yourself, and now because of that you're so afraid because you don't have it, and how are you going to be able
Mhm.
to give that love to your child?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my fight or flight response was triggered,
Hmm.
and my body was telling me to get away, move away. Um, but in my head, the logical side of my brain was very aware of the fallout that that would cause. And so it was like I was battling internally with knowing what the result would be if I left and telling my fight or flight response to just stop. We're safe. We're okay. Um yeah, so that's where I started.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because through that experience you then healed your own sense of abandonment, because the abandonment, the opposite wound of abandonment is safety and security. It's the opposite of feeling abandoned. And so by you not abandoning yourself or running, which you wanted to do, you call it fight or flight, or your ego, or whatever you want to call it, that insecure part that is acting out or wants to act out, you chose not to act out on that. And you might not have realized it at the time, but what you were doing is you were not going to abandon yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that was also the fear that you had with your daughter, because will you abandon her? So abandonment, the core wound of abandonment, was playing a big, huge, role. It was coming up to be healed so that you can fully be healed and not abandon your daughter, not abandon
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. So
Yeah, go ahead.
a huge part of the work that I do is helping mamas get untriggered
Mm,
and implement an action plan for them to use in the moment that will help them bring themselves back down to earth and create a more calm and peaceful environment.
yeah, that's really good. That's really good, because that is where you live. That is where your
Mhm.
children live, and that is where your house is, in that peaceful environment. But if you're in the house or in your environment triggered and reactive, then everything else is going to, feel that intensity as well, right?
Yeah.
So now that you have two kids, how do you do it now, helping mamas, with your two children? How do you find the time to do this work, to support others?
Well, I have a really supportive husband
That's awesome.
um, who is also an entrepreneur. So we have the ability to create a flexible schedule where he gets his work time, I get my work time, and we come together. And it's amazing.
That's so awesome. How long you guys been married?
We've been married for 6.5 years.
Okay, so you were married before you had kids,
Hmm.
and you're both entrepreneurs, and
Hmm.
you're raising a family, and you're supporting each other.
Yeah.
So you've got all kinds of fabulous examples to support others with.
Yeah.
That's really great. How can people get in touch with you? How can those mamas that are listening, uh, that are resonating with this, to contact you?
So you can contact me on Instagram. You can find me at emily.cleghorn.coach, or you can go to my website withemilyc.ca.
So, how do you feel your life is today, uh, in comparison to where you were in 2018?
I'm not the same person.
Mhm.
In 2018, I struggled to speak up for myself. I struggled to implement boundaries. I was a people pleaser, and I am none of those things now. So,
That's really powerful. You did a lot of healing in a short amount of time, in addition to give birth to two children.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Well, I think it's wonderful, Emily, the work that you're doing, because I know it's needed. So you do have a book on Amazon, is that right?
Yeah, my book is available on my website right
Okay, thank
now. So,
you.
yeah, you go to my website and it's right there on the homepage. So it's called Rising from the Ashes: How to Reclaim Your Life After Traumatic Childhood.
Good, good. So what do you want to leave our audience with today?
Mama, it's okay to put yourself first. You need to take care of yourself and fill your own cup before you can fill anybody else's cup. So it's not selfish to love you first.
That's really good. It's kind of like you have to put the mask on first before you can
Hmm.
put the mask on in the airplane. The airplane
Yeah.
is, yeah, those were very good words. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate having you on the show today. We're going to take a break on the Kornelia Stephanie Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. My next guest today is Monette Van Lith. She trained as a life coach in the life coach school. Monette draws on 25 years of professional experience on 4 continents. Monette's international experience in North, South America, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and her professional experience in the corporate and nonprofit sectors give her the insights and ability to understand people at a deep level. Prior to her coaching practice, she managed a medical equipment company in Romania, worked for a nonprofit organization in Israel for UNICEF, in New York, and for the United Nations in Sudan. Welcome to the show today, Monette.
Thank you,
Nice
Cornelia. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so before we came on, so basically your work is life coaching, family coaching. Is that what you're doing now, or are you still working with corporate environments as well?
Yeah, I do both actually. I work as a work-life balance coach. And so I help my clients balance family and career, if that's the case for them. And I also do trainings, corporate trainings to, for employees to find balance in work and life. So I do both.
Oh, good. Okay. So before we came on the show, we were talking in the green room about what the message is going to be today. And you were talking about the word resilience. Why don't we go into what you mean by that, and what is it that you want to focus on with that word?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the space that you create here where we can kind of share and learn together. But, resilience is described as a capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. And so I think about it sometimes as, these little roly-poly dolls that have like a rounded bottom. And so they may get knocked over, but they always kind of sway back and forth and then come back to the center. I kind of think of resilience in that way. And, there are so many factors that will ultimately determine how someone responds to adversity and is able to bounce back from difficulties, including the environment in which we grow up and the experiences, that we go through and the circumstances of our childhood and youth. And so what I'd love to share is just a few stories where I could see that we can help children and adolescents and even youth to develop this resilience so that they build capacity and that they build confidence in their ability to manage difficult things. And so I once was at a playground. I used to live in New York City for a while when my youngest child was still very little. And, we were at a playground and there were lots of kids and nannies and parents and so on. And I was sitting on a bench taking the scene in and watching my child. And I saw this other child, about a 4-year-old, who was trying to push their stroller up a ramp. And the stroller had a little baby doll in it. And this child was really working hard to try to push this stroller up. And I was intrigued by the child's determination. He was not at all fazed by the effort it took to try to do this. And that the mom, however, was getting a little bit maybe nervous or maybe a little impatient, or she felt sorry for the child. So at some point she walked over and she took the stroller in one hand and the child in the other arm and kind of carried them up the ramp and then put them down and sort of said like, here, now you're up here. And, it looked like that was a good idea. But at the same time, I was thinking, and of course the intentions were very good, but I was wondering, was that really helping the child at that moment? Maybe it was helping them with that particular problem, but did the child learn something new from this experience? A new way of doing something, or maybe an experience to overcome a challenge and succeed at their own terms. And in my view, it looked like there was an opportunity that was kind of taken away from the child to learn and grow in doing something difficult. So it could have been very different for the child. They may have tried to pull the stroller instead of pushing it. They might have tried to get somebody to help them, like advocate for themselves. And who knows what kind of problem-solving skills they might have kind of thought of and developed in that moment. So one way, yeah, go ahead.
What I love is how you said, because you were also observing, the mother was observing, and how you said that the child, he wasn't at all, you know, consumed with the effort that he was putting in. He was really into it and really excited to get that stroller up the ramp. And, you know, that was already showing his, like you called it, determination. I'm going to get up there. And as long as he wasn't hurting himself or hurting anyone else, right, then why, you know, but this is a very good point, because I'm sure that a lot of mothers would do that because they don't want to see their child struggle if that's how they view it.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought as well, which is like sometimes for us as parents, we feel maybe we feel nervous for the child, right? That they're struggling, or maybe the child is getting a little frustrated. Are we able as parents to say, like, that's okay, you can be frustrated because I know you're trying to do something difficult. I see you can trying to do something hard, but I also trust that you can do it. And if you need help, you'll call me, right? That kind of idea too. We don't want our kids to suffer, but to kind of give them a little space and opportunity. Yeah.
Especially some little guy that was so determined to make it up the ramp. So because, you know, you saw it too. So great story. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know how much time we have left. I have another story I could tell you if you like. Yeah. This other story is about a client of mine, a coaching client who is a very successful surgeon who was struggling with seeing his daughter get rejected from graduate schools that she had applied for. And so the dad and I spoke about this, and I asked him how it had been for him when he was trying to get into medical school back in the days. And he said he had applied to 20 schools and got rejected by all of them. And he was very distressed at the time, and his confidence was completely shot. So he decided to take a gap year and volunteered at a health clinic overseas for 6 months. And, you know, it was difficult, but he was so much enjoying the experience that he ended up staying the full year. And his whole perspective on life and himself changed. And so when he applied for school after that year that he was away, and now he had so many new experiences and so much that he had learned, he got accepted by the top 3 universities that he applied for. And I asked him what he would like for his daughter to learn at this point in her life. And he said, I want her to see that life is full of disappointments and setbacks, but that things work out if we keep at it and we try new things and we don't lose hope. He decided to sit down with his daughter and show her his file of rejection letters that he had kept from those days, as a way to have a good laugh, you know, and show vulnerability, but also to let her see that success is often built on a pile of so-called failures. And so that was something that I thought was also interesting, that even with our slightly older kids, you know, that are in college, they still struggle as well with setbacks and with seeing that, you know, yeah, it doesn't get handed to you. You actually have to keep trying and try new things and so on. And so that was another example for me, that resilience, that we as parents give them the trust and the confidence that they can do it.
I think this is such a powerful story. I mean, for all of us to hear this story, that, you know, to keep at it, and that a lot of people that have become successful in whatever they're doing have had many doors closed, many rejections happened, many things that didn't work out, but it's because they really wanted it. They really wanted to keep going, and they really persevered through the challenges. And I think it was a wonderful experience for the dad to share that with his daughter, because, you know, as kids, we look at our parents like, oh, they've always had this or whatever, you know, where they are, right? And to see that, that's a powerful story, powerful tool. Really love that.
Yeah. And I was thinking just the connection between resilience and hope, because I think if children feel that they have what it takes, even though they don't know what life's going to throw them, but that they feel like they have what it takes to overcome obstacles and difficulties, then that gives them hope as well, because they see like, I can face the future, I can face whatever comes my way. And I think that gives hope.
That does give hope. Yes, it gives hope. It's inspiring that no matter what the challenges are, that this is part of life, and that for us to keep going. And it was a wonderful message that you shared with us today. Let's tell the audience how they can find out more about you and look you up on social media and your website.
Thank you, Cornelia. Yeah, so people can find me on the usual social media platforms. My name is unusual enough that if you type Monette Van Lith, that you'll get some of that. During the pandemic, I wrote a book which was really inspired by the way parents were struggling working from home with the children there and getting all the things done. So I wrote this book called Family Matters, and it really is a roadmap for families and for parents in particular to kind of map out their future as a family and think about how do we create an environment in our family that where everyone can thrive. So those are kind of the different places. I work as a coach with individual clients, and also with I do group trainings as well, and group coaching. So that's it really. You should be able to find me if you want to.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Monette Van Lith, thank you so much for coming on the Kornelia Stephanie Show. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. You know, with where you were, and then what was that?
Okay, right. So as you had mentioned, for 45 years, I was a yo-yo dieter, and I kept going from diet to diet, hoping that I could stick to one long enough, or basically forever, so that I could lose all the weight and that I wanted to, and get the body I wanted, and just basically eat like a normal person. And that just never happened. So in 2010, I woke up one morning and I was literally petrified to get into bed one more night, feeling bloated and disgusting and hopeless and helpless. And something came over me that day. And you could imagine, over 45 years, how many times, with all the different dieting and all the gym memberships and therapies, that I was fed up. But there was something different about that day. So I thought to myself, if I'm too afraid to get into bed tonight, feeling the same way, all I cared about right then and there was, I want to be happy when I get into bed. Like, it was as though I had no choice. And I said to myself, I have to figure this out today, which sounded like a pretty tall order after, so many attempts. So I thought, well, if I want to get into bed happy tonight, I have to be happy after everything I eat. So I started to break that down. Well, what does that mean to be happy after I eat? As a binge eater, I never really even wanted to think about the afterwards, because I was compelled to eat whether I was hungry or not, huge quantities. And even though I knew I'd be, miserable and uncomfortable afterwards, I didn't focus in on that because I just needed my fix. So it really was like I was having an affair with food. And so I started to think, well, I really need to be happy after everything I eat. So what could that look like? So then I thought about, if the diets have always failed me, which, I was on, no matter what diet I was on, there were foods off limits. And what would happen is, I could hold on to the willpower for some time and be able to take off some weight. But then I would get so frustrated with the deprivation that would bring me right back to binging. So what I realized on this day in 2010 is that there can't be any foods off limits. I have to figure out how to eat my favorite foods in moderation. And trust me, that was the scariest thought, because I didn't know how to eat anything in moderation, like ever. So, this started when I was 5 years old. So I was always either on a diet or eating bags and boxes of things. I didn't know. I like to use the wording, I didn't know how to eat 2 cookies. I would eat 22. So on this day, I said, I have to figure out how to eat whatever I want in moderation. And then I started to just ask myself some questions, about, like, first of all, am I even hungry? Because that's another thing I never thought of when I was binge eating. It didn't matter whether I was hungry or not. As I said before, I was just compelled. So am I hungry? If the answer was no, I just decided, well, then I'm not going to eat yet. I'm going to put it off for, a little while until I'm hungry. Then I would ask myself other questions. What am I actually in the mood for if I was hungry? And I would try to figure out what taste, what temperature, was it savory? Was it sweet? Was it crunchy? Like, what was I looking for? So I basically started to slow the whole process down instead of just thinking of food and diving right in. So just asking myself questions allowed me to have a conscious conversation with myself to make conscious choices. And once I was able to do that, where I was choosing what I wanted, then I would ask myself, oh, how much of this can I eat and be happy when it's over? Because remember, that was the only thing I cared about. And so then I would figure out, well, how much, and I had a way of figuring out how much can I eat and be happy when it's over? And once I saw myself being able to, let's just go back to the cookies, be able to eat 2 cookies instead of 22, I then began to build trust in myself, which I never had before. And that's really when everything changed.
Did you lose weight?
I have lost 90 pounds. I've gotten to a size 4. I'm comfortable in my body. I'm comfortable in my clothes. And it took a while. It wasn't a linear, like on your mark, get set, go. It took some time, but that's okay, because what I tell people when I work with them is this is not a weight loss program. It's not a diet, and it's not a weight loss program. When they learn how to get free from food addiction, then the weight loss follows like effortlessly.
Yeah.
So that is what happened.
Yeah, because they're not holding on. They're willing to shift their relationship with their body, with their food, with the experience, all of it.
Yes.
What a powerful process. And just like you said, it didn't happen overnight. You didn't lose 90 pounds overnight. It didn't happen in this 1 year. It took you 45 years to get where you were. What makes you think it's going to be gone like that? It's gonna take some shifting, but that you're in a size 4 today. And I love what you use, that you're not depriving, or you didn't want to deprive yourself from anything. That was the thing for you, is that was always the deal breaker that got you to cross the boundary, right? Is that you always felt deprived, and that you didn't want to deprive yourself. And so since you have completely shifted your relationship, and now you can eat what you want without abandoning yourself.
Right. And as I say, now I eat to live instead of live to eat. And it affects my entire life. When I was with my family and I was a binge eater, I was always sneaking off to hide food that I had, eat it in private, because I didn't want them to know what I was really eating. So wherever we were, I always had junk food in my purse, and I couldn't even really enjoy my time with them. I have an amazing husband and 3 sons. And I was always thinking, when is it lunchtime? When can I sneak off to the bathroom? And when I became free from food addiction, now if I want to eat something that has, more calories, I don't need to hide it. I just decide how much I want to have, that I'll be happy when it's over, and I can eat it in front of them, and I can enjoy my life with them.
So when you eat 2 cookies now, it's not an issue at all? Is
No. Yeah, it's not at all. I haven't binged in I don't know how many years. Now, that's not to say that I'm always doing the work every day, every minute. And I do say that this takes work every day. It's not hard work. It's a matter of just asking yourself certain questions. And when you do the work, this changes people's lives. Most people can change their life inside of a day, which is what I did. And many do change their relationship with food within a day, because when they can see themselves doing what I was talking about, where you can make conscious decisions and not just dive in head first, and not, when you see that you can live as the opposite of a binge eater and interrupt that impulsive pattern, then you build trust in yourself. And once you have that, you say to yourself, well, if I can eat 2 cookies, why would I ever want to abuse my body again and eat 22? But there are times when maybe I don't feel like doing the work. That does happen sometimes. And so, there are times when I may gain 2 or 3 or 4 pounds at most. I never let it get past that. And then I say to myself, okay, it's time to hone in, get back into it. And what I tell people is it's almost like what I share with people when I coach them. It's almost like a medicine. What I mean by that is if somebody has diabetes, they have to take insulin. If they take their insulin, they'll feel well. But if they say, well, it's a weekend, I took my insulin all week and I don't really feel like taking it on the weekend, they'll backslide or they may not feel so well. Well, in this case, when people stop doing the work, I guarantee them they will backslide. So again, it isn't hard work at all, but if you let go of the reins, you will backslide. And so I do too. I just don't let it turn into what my life used to be, where I could gain 9 pounds in 3 days. Like nothing like that ever happens.
Yeah. And you're eating to live because you want to live and you feel good and you're eating in moderation. And then there's occasionally the time where, I don't want to be disciplined, that discipline today. I want to be free from that. And that's okay. But to bring it back to it's so much easier to get on track. Let's tell the audience where they can look you up and find out more about you and your work.
Sure. Thank you. It's they can go to peacefuleater.com. And I have a couple of programs. And if your listeners are interested in choosing a coaching program, there's a promo code where they can get 10% off of the coaching packages. So the promo code is KSmedia10. And if they put that in, they'll get 10% off. I also have on the homepage of my website is a free gift. They would be opting into my email list and they would get the 10 tips to stop overeating. I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/peacefuleater and on LinkedIn with my name, Julie Latz, Latz.
Julie Latz, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I love that you're helping women worldwide regain and reclaim their physical body and their relationship, change their relationship with food. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. My next guest is from the future. She is currently in Australia, and it is definitely in the future there. Marcia Teperman is known as the Turnaround Alchemist. She is the host of the Turnaround Talk Show and podcast. Marcia is a trauma-informed somatic energy healer and personal transformation mentor, author, mother of 2 boys, a lover of nature, SUP, and the rhythm of drums. She was nominated as a power healer to follow in 2022 for her work in the field of mental wellness, helping high potential women heal and navigate through key life transitions with resilience and purpose. So welcome to the show today, Marcia.
Thank you, Kornelia, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. So in the green room, before we started talking, we were talking about what part really to highlight today, to speak to that energy of what it is that you're doing to help others rise out of. And you said,
I said that I'd love to talk about how we go from, being in an unhealthy, abusive relationship with an emotionally unavailable man to being in a relationship that feels magically safe, nurturing, loving, and you feel empowered in. So you're not begging for love, not anxious, So it was a long journey for me. And I think I like to say it started probably in childhood. And I have, a soft spot for women who had a tough upbringing like I did, because you don't always know what love is. And so your internal reference of love and relationships and healthy relationships is all messed up, and it's not your fault. So, sometimes you go like, I had a terrible eye for men, I always picked the wrong man. So I want to just, first of all, get this out of your head. It's not your fault, right? So that's what I have to say is really, troubled upbringing with family dysfunction. My mom, bless her, she suffers with mental illness, and that alone is a lot, right? And so, I'm also Jewish, and I grew up with that message that I should find a good Jewish man. Now, I didn't grow up with the message that you should love yourself first and foremost. You should know who you are. You should have a purpose. That's the message I grew up. One day you're going to find a man. The man will come and he will rescue you. He will provide. He will all of those things. And of course, you will work. You will have a career. But you kind of that message that you should put a man in the center of your universe, and that you will then sort of orbitate around the man, as opposed to putting yourself in the center of your universe, more than, loving it, the idea of being with a man more than loving yourself.
Yeah, I think, again, that's the generational time that because that was the conditioning that was put upon our mothers, our ancestors, right? That they, back then, that's what everyone was doing. And so now, our turn was to undo that.
Yes, the undoing, yes.
Right? The undoing. It was ours now to undo and say, no, that's not the way that I want to do that, because I don't need to be rescued by a man, because I'm rescuing myself.
Because I stand on my own 2 feet strong, and I know who I am, right? And then, so I'm Gen X, and I think that, it's just so important to educate not only our girls, but our boys as well, right? On what's toxic masculinity, and how to be emotionally articulate and all of that. So I've got 2 boys. And so then childhood, growing up with that message, and then I found a Jewish man. And I moved to Israel before that. It was a really funny story, because I went on a date with the vice consul of Israel. At the time, my English wasn't good enough for me to speak English fluently with him during the lunch. And it was a lunch date, or Hebrew. And I spoke Hebrew. And so we had this really kind of, weird time trying to communicate. He was trying to use his Portuguese. I'm originally from Brazil. So I realized there was a gap there for me, that I really wanted to sort of grow into the person who wanted to speak English, who wanted to, feel more worldly and not necessarily feel like restricted to where I lived. And so I moved to Israel, and I met my ex-husband. And that didn't go so well. And after 10 years of that really difficult marriage, I had what I call the what the F moment. I had a what the F moment that was like, how did I get here? Why am I here? Right? And so I started my healing journey, and also started my journey of becoming a transformational mentor by doing an NLP intensive week of certification. And if you did anything like that, you know how taxing that is. That's a lot of deep work. And then later, I left the marriage and 2 children under 8. I was, on welfare for a bit, and I had to do all of that kind of work to sort of land back on my feet, because he was the primary income earner in the home, and my business was secondary to his, and all of that kind of thing. So there was a reconstruction of my identity and finding my feet and all of that, and a deep desire to have a safe, nurturing relationship with someone who I would feel seen, celebrated, and all of that. But it took me a while to find that person, and there was a little pattern going. And then when I started to experience anxiety and panic syndrome at one point with one of the men I was in a relationship, and it was a stable relationship, I was like on my knees in desperation. I was like, this is not what I'm looking for. something has to change, right? And so what I realized, Kornelia, was that I really had completely denied myself of my sensitivity, completely, since childhood. I, feeling and crying and protesting was not allowed, and, had to kind of conform and, to feel safe around. My coping mechanism was to, shape shift and just be what I needed to be at that moment. And that's what I realized, that it was actually attracting that kind of man. Instead of me being me, knowing who I am, showing up exactly the way I am, honoring, respecting my boundaries, and making sure that I have my own needs met, I was like, still shape shifting to be what I needed to be in a relationship. And so, yes, go ahead. You want to say
you're articulating it so well. You had to make room first for a new pathway to open up, because you were still playing out the old pathway at first with the way that you were conditioned from your childhood to be saved by a man or put the man first and all the things. You had to then learn to put yourself first and make sure that you get honored, that you get listened to, that you get celebrated, like you said. And that is the new standard, and that everybody else that comes into that new standard, this is how it is. And that's exactly what you're doing. And that's what you're doing now. And so that is a wonderful, I think you're amazing. First of all, I can feel your energy, feeling how passionate you are about doing this work, and the work that you're doing to help others also release that old burden and really step into their birthright of what it's like to really be you, right?
Exactly. And also, Kornelia, what I noticed talking to women is that it's not just the conditioning of putting men in the center and men rescuing you, is all the beliefs about what intimacy is, what intimacy has to be, what the place of the woman is in intimacy, and that the focus on the sexual relationship as opposed to the emotional intimacy, that connection, the honoring of each other. So, there's a lot of undoing we have to do, right? Like you said, to be able to be in a safe, secure, loving relationship and feel like, right, relax. Like I am relaxed now. Yeah. So I finally found my guy, and actually he moved in 2 weeks ago. And, it's really funny because we kind of laugh a little bit when we find ourselves in the old pattern, of bickering and just sort of like having that kind of indirect communication, and we laugh, and it feels
I don't want to interrupt. I definitely want to have you back, because we've got 30 seconds. I want to send everyone to your website or your social media. Give it to us fast.
So my Facebook is Marcia Teperman Coach. My website is marciateperman.com.au, although I think you do get through to .com as well, but it's in Australia, so at .au. And my Instagram is Marcia Teperman.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you on again, and then we can celebrate your new relationship, your new guy, and you can tell us all about it. We want to thank everyone for listening today and tuning into Stories of Hope. We'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Lots of love. Take care.
You've been listening to the Kornelia Stephanie Show, Wake Up to Love, your call to action. Tune in each week on Transformation Talk Radio. Kornelia's joy is to engage others in practical ways, showing us how to live in the new earth in harmony with our true nature. For more information on Kornelia and her extraordinary work, or to listen to past shows, go to her website at korneliastephanie.com.